Hello, literacy enthusiasts, and welcome to LitFilmFest Live, where we discuss a classroom topic and a brand new book to go alongside it. I'm Tim, and tonight we're joined with a real Victorian. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Tim.
I presume you're a Victorian, as you've been writing about Victorian fiction.
Yes, I just look really good for my age.
Really good. Can you tell us a little bit about the book that you've written? Would that be okay?
Yes, of course. So I've written a book called Son of the Circus, which is part of Scholastic's Voices series, which aims to kind of address the fact that Black people, mixed race people have always been part of Britain's history. We might just not always be in the history books. So far there's 4 books out. There's got a little bookmark here. Don't know if you can see that. So there's Now or Never, which is set in the Second World War, First World War, Tudor times, with Patrice Lawrence, and then there's me, Victorian, and then the beautiful cover of A Roman Story, which is Layla. So as part of that really great series, and chose to write about Victorian times.
I think that's really fascinating. It's Black History Month, actually, isn't it? So it fits in really well with what we're talking about.
Good timing.
British history is very white, isn't it? It's very kings and queens, very King Henry VIII and all of his 6 white wives, isn't it? So to have that celebrated, really, to think about not only a Black Victorian, but a Black Victorian who owned a circus, which is what you've been writing about, is a really interesting take. What's your book about?
Yeah, we didn't. I think it was kind of up to us if we wanted to use real people, as opposed to kind of, a real period in history and then fictionalize elements. So, but I really enjoyed history at school, and I think history can be brought alive if it's, told well and engaging. And what was so appealing about this project was that history was going to be full of people, like me, which was fantastic. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do it based around a real person. And I think people have known about Queen Victoria, had a mixed race. I think she adopted or fostered or had some kind of lady in waiting. And that story's already been told. And then I remembered that a writer friend of mine, a fantastic writer called Jenny Spangler, told me about Pablo Fanky ages ago. And I kind of knew that I was doing this Victorian book, and then I kind of remembered Jenny telling me about Pablo, and he was the first Black circus owner, born William Darby in Norwich in 1810, and he was a real character. And so I kind of dived down into some research and read about his life. There was one book written about his life that I could find, and Wikipedia led me down the whole of he was immortalized in a Beatles song called For the Benefit of Mr. Kite on Sergeant Pepper. And
that's everyone's goal, isn't it? That's everyone's goal, is to be a Beatles song. Too late now.
And then I kind of saw images of him, and he was a really amazing horseman. He was equestrian, and he was just, he performed in front of Queen Victoria, and his life just sounded extraordinary. So when I did my research, I discovered that he had many children, but he had at least 4 sons. So I was thinking I could use, write about Pablo as a main character, but then the dates didn't match up. So it wouldn't have fitted into a Victorian period, his age. And he was born in a workhouse, and that he was kind of one of maybe 5 children. So that would have been interesting to explore. And then I looked at some of his children. There wasn't much on a couple of them. Pablo was married twice. His first wife died in a tragic circus accident. Really terrible. I've written about it in the book. Beams fell on her, like the gallery collapsed. And it could have been Pablo was trying to save a bit of money, maybe by using a setup that had been for a previous circus. Right. So there's probably a bit of guilt there, but it isn't certain. Anyway, she died. His son Lionel was really upset with his dad, as you would be, and kind of stormed off a bit. And then there was a 20-year age gap between him and his next wife and the other 2 children he had. So then he had Ted and George. And
then Ted, isn't it? Ted is the protagonist.
Yes, Ted's our protagonist. Ted's our hero. After I kind of got lost a bit in research, which is very easy to do, I
Wikipedia, again, it's very easy to go down that
Google
line.
is not your friend. Google is not your friend. Yeah, after getting a bit lost in research, I just sort of had the information, the little bits of information in my brain that had really, caught my imagination. And then just did that thing that anyone who wants to do anything artistic or curious starts doing, and started thinking, what if, based on facts. So what if you're Ted and you're mixed race and you're living in Bradfield with your brother George and your mum, and your dad's never been around, or you kind of maybe met him when you were 2 or 3. What if one day this guy turns up on the doorstep and says, I'm your dad, and you need to come with me and learn how to be a man and, carry on the family name and be in the circus. And then what if you hate the circus? What if that's a nightmare for you? And then I just had loads of questions that I wanted to explore and answer, and
that's the joy of the author, isn't it? To have those questions and to answer them, or even not even answer them actually always, is it? But to allude to lots of questions in your own text, and you want to take the reader on those journeys with you, really. So on that note, we do actually have a book giveaway tonight. Scholastic are giving us 15 copies of I know, wow, that's a lot, of Son of the Circus. That means 3 lucky winners will get a guiding readings worth of 5 books each, so that they can read them in small groups with their class, which is very good. Thank you, Scholastic, to those. All you have to do to be in for a chance of winning that lucky bundle is to follow the LitFilmFest page for one. Please like the video, share it, and comment below with someone that you think should be in the circus. Who is it? Is it a cheeky TA? Is it a good juggling teacher that you have 5 minutes so you can juggle a few board rubbers? I don't know. Anyway, you can comment below. Tell us below. And if you do one of those, then you stand a chance of winning. Every action that you do, you have then a chance of winning Emma's lovely books. So that's not bad, is it? Not bad at all, Emma.
Sounds good. Can I enter?
No, unfortunately not. UK and Ireland only as well is one of the restrictions. And last week's winner of a competition that we held is Matt Ellis. Well done, Matt. You have won a copy of Sophie Washington, one of the Sophie Washington series. So we'll be sending that to your school shortly. Well done. So let's kick things off with a meaty question, shall we, for you, Emma? And why do you think it's such an engaging time period to learn about for children? So why is the Victorian time period really interesting for you? Because you did have a choice between Victorian and Viking, actually, didn't you? And also, how do you creatively teach historical periods in the classroom? Comments below, and we'll be answering live in the session. Emma, why is it an engaging time period?
Oh, it's a period of such massive growth, isn't it? Everything was happening, basically. Yeah, just amazing. So you've got the bicycle being invented, you've got steam trains. I can't remember the exact date, but the first London Underground was like 1840, maybe. It just seemed so much progress and things happening. Obviously, lots of terrible things, poverty and overcrowding and disease. But so many things were being invented and discoveries being made. First photographs, the postal system. Just exciting growth, progress. I remember reading about the Great Exhibition, 1851, I think, which I really actually still want to write about, because to be there,
that was the big scientific. It would almost look like Kew Gardens, didn't it? Where they just brought things from around the world just to show off, didn't they?
Yeah. I so want to write about that. I just think, can you imagine walking in? And I think Prince Albert, gave penny entrances, I think, for some people, so you could, loads of people had access. And just to be somewhere and see things that you would never see, it's like, when you're little and you go to the Natural History Museum or something for the first time and you see that big dinosaur in the entrance, and it would just be like every second would be like being blown away. Or when the Lumiere brothers, when you first see the train on the cinema screen, you would be like, what's going on?
It's such a kind of education, wasn't it, where they wanted to educate the populace, didn't they, to be like better, to push them up, really.
Yeah, I mean, kids didn't have to go to school. So if you were rich, you would be tutored at home privately. And if you were poor and a kid, you would, you could and would be working. Chimney sweep, road sweep, road sweeper with all the horses everywhere, loads of muck. You'd have to keep the rich people clean, making matchboxes, all that kind of stuff, sewing. It wasn't until later that schooling became compulsory. I can't remember the exact date either, I'm afraid, but late 1800s is when you had to go to school till you were 10. Everyone had to go to school, but you had to pay still. So if you were really poor, you'd still have to work to support your family.
And I think there's that kind of macabre element to the Victorian time period that a lot of us find interesting. The fact that children had to go down the mine, or they were working underneath machines that we find fascinating, and kids do as well. I remember in year 2, being taken to the front of the class and being caned at the front, and they go ow, ow, in this very theatrical way that the teacher whispered into my ear, "I want you to scream when I pretend to hit you." But that's something that stuck with me. That happened, and kids like the darkness sometimes, and they're fascinated by how different their life is compared to now.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we've just got it very cushy now, haven't we? Really, if you think about it. If my son's like, "Well, I've got to take my plate to the kitchen," I'm like, "You're lucky you're not down a chimney, Sam." Like, I mean,
kick him out.
Children were treated as little adults. Working really hard. If your parents carked it, unfortunately, you would maybe go to a workhouse, orphanage, but you would. You might get a roof over your head and some food, but you would have to work really hard. You could get sent to jail as a child and then bullied and picked on by adults. It was really tough times, I think. And there's also a lot of kind of mysticism and strange. It's very kind of atmospheric, isn't it? You think of dark Dickensian streets and dark light, and it's a great period.
We just had a question come in as well from Julianne. Thank you, Julianne. Is there a stage of history that you, Emma, would find more challenging to write about and you would avoid? Julianne's currently finding ancient Greece challenging to teach. That's a very good question. Thanks for sending that in.
I'd be interested to hear from Julianne why she's finding it a challenge to teach. I don't think when I was offered Victorians or Vikings, because writing for middle grade and because writing historical fiction for me was a new thing, I've written for, 30 odd years, but both these areas were new for me. I knew that I would want to dive into research. I would want to see photographs of grumpy looking Victorians. I would want to read about, so I knew there'd be more for me to read and see visually and be inspired by, not to mention Pablo, when I put those two things together. But that's why I chose Victorians. For me to write about fiction-wise, I would just have to be interested in the period of history. So from school, I still remember, those topics that really set my heart on fire. So I was obsessed with the Second World War for a bit. And Anne Frank, I remember reading Anne Frank's diary, really affected me. That kind of got me starting a diary, and it just blew me away. And Henry VIII, and yes, he has got, him and his 6 wives, but I remember being really interested in Lady Jane, who was the one who, and just that whole thing, that period of Tudors was just, amazing. And I'd like to write about the Greeks, ancient Greece, time of massive opulence, and there's loads of periods of history I'd like to write about, actually, I think.
I quite like the Lyconians. Well, they were called the Lyconians, but we know them as the Spartans. And they were called
Spartan!
for Sparta. And to be I forgot the term is now, the adjective, but it's you can be a Lyconian in your speech, and it's meant to be short and punchy, and doesn't use many words, and that's why they were called the Lyconians, because they would actually talk in very like punchy, witty phrases, and this is written in history, which I love. So I'm not sure if you've seen the film 300, but a lot of that is actually said to be true to how they spoke. So it's a very fascinating like snapshot of this period of history is through this one person or this slice of people. I think that's sometimes easier to learn about massive swathes of history is to learn about one individual or one group of people, isn't it? So it's more digestible then, isn't it?
So they would have loved Twitter then, wouldn't they?
They were hashtagged all over. Tell you, wouldn't have gone anywhere near that character limit. And that takes us on to our next point, really, because you've not just focused on the Victorian time period, but circuses as well, haven't you? What made you go down that route?
Well, personally, I've always been a fan of circuses, but fairgrounds in particular. So I just think fairgrounds and circuses, and I don't mean circuses as in any cruelty to animals. We're not talking The Greatest Showman here, although same sort of time. But personally, for me, I think it's just a magical space. It feels like a place where anything can happen. So when you're a teenager, and I'll try and keep this proper, but when you're a teenager and you're maybe 14, 15, and it's dark and you're allowed out for the first time, maybe safe, and the waltzer man spinning the waltzer and you're screaming with all your mates, and there's lights and there's candy floss and there's sweets and everything's hot and everything assaults your senses. I just love fairgrounds and circuses where you get to go and you get to see people who are amazing at what they do, and with their bodies and maybe with some animals. I just think it's such a rich, vibrant, interesting, magical place where everything's a possibility. You see people doing. I took my kids to the circus a few years ago, and they had some crazy kind of bike stunt thing. Some guy in a cage, right? You're just there with your mouth open. And as an adult, it's really easy for us to lose that sense of wonder and enthusiasm. We've seen it all, and what's next, and and I just love it when I'm like, oh, what's going on? So that's.
I think it's like Britain's Got Talent in real life, isn't it? Really, like you get very used to seeing everything on TV when you want it at the touch of a button, don't you? Big crashes, people doing amazing tricks, and it was bottle flips a few years ago, wasn't it? And fidget spinners now it's TikTok where it's thing. Yeah. But to have a show orchestrated and carefully put on and thought about the space in front of you and the lighting, there's something special, isn't there, about that?
I definitely think so. And to kind of answer the question more accurately, different from modern day circus. So just the setup would have been so different, and it was difficult, a really difficult life. Pablo was touring, everything would have been on horse and cart. He would have been traveling in all weathers. I had some really interesting research books, and it just sounded like such a hard life, putting up the tent and the poles, physical canvas, and you were just at mercy of the weather, really. If snow and stuff ripped through it, sawdust around, and trying to keep the animals, trying to keep the horses, trying to set up sort of stables. It was a really hard graft, and everyone got involved. It was a real physical thing where everyone kind of pitched in, and just Absolutely. That thing, family and everyone kind of doing it, together and traveling around town to town, place to place, and little towns being like nothing going on there. It's not even like now where there's cinema, restaurant, but nothing.
Yeah, I'll pay you an egg to go in.
yeah, and maybe you might get an orange in kind of the break as the biggest thrill ever. Just to imagine living your whole life like that, and then the circus coming to town, and it will be passed down. Just that would have been like a fever pitch of excitement, I think.
Sure, isn't it? And we just had Julianne come back to us as well. She said that she thinks that's what I need to do. I need to research more. I'm in year 3 and previously taught Anglo-Saxons, which I love. Also the Tudors. Thanks for discussing it. Thank you, Julianne, for those kind words. Yeah, I think researching is really important, isn't it? And it's the job of an author, but it is of a teacher as well, isn't it? Is to just make sure and fact check what they're teaching, particularly historically, is accurate. And it's not too hard to do if you want to pick out some of the main facts. It depends how far you want to go down with your class, really. So, sorry, Emma.
No, I was just thinking that I was just trying to think of me being at school and Greek, and I mean I know the kind of Greek myths and legends aren't, you know, but that kind of is finding those angles, isn't it, where because kind of emotionally you feel, you know, humans have always, those desires and those things are still there, aren't they, throughout history. So, you know, everyone, you know, power, passion, you know, greed, you know, the big kind of chunky emotions.
Motivators.
You find those stories, and it doesn't matter what period of history, it's those stories that people want to know about, you know, why did he want to be king, and why did he kill his brother, and you know, what kind of stuff is the juicy stuff.
That leads us on to this question, really. What do you think to this the writing process for you? You already said you write to do with character and motivation often. And what other kind of writing tips do you have for maybe wannabe authors out there? Lots of teachers are now becoming authors, which is great, but also the children as well.
Teachers who are writing and wanting to become authors, I take my hat off to you. Like, you must be exhausted, and where do you find the time? I was always a massive reader. I was a huge, you know, I love reading, a huge reader. And I do think if you read a lot, it helps with any, you know, adults, children, whoever. But I actually don't think it really matters what you read, to be honest.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of pressure to read certain kind of books, and that can really kill creativity. I've got 2 kids. My 11-year-old girl is not a reader. She's an artist, and she loves, her favorite book of the last few years was The Dog, the Horse, you know, that one, Charlie McCain.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh my word, she loves that and reads it on a loop. And I'm also kind of exploring graphic novels and comics with her. But she doesn't really like kind of storybooks, and she likes funny books. So Jamie Smart does brilliant comics, really hilarious. Bunny versus Monkey, they're hilarious. And Mr. Gum was a big hit in our household. Mr. Gum's hilarious. And my son is a massive reader, and he's just a year older. He's 12, and he's crazy about dystopia. So I've let him read some things that maybe he shouldn't have read.
I feel like we live in a dystopia anyway at the minute.
Yeah, I think that market's going to go live. Everyone's going to want romance next, I think. But yeah,
2021, the year of the romance, please.
Yeah, no one has a cough in it, no consumption or anything. Yeah, so I think, so we have lots of different reading in our house, but I think just reading anything, like literally, you know, cereal packets and comics and newspapers and magazines and gaming, you know, if someone likes gaming are telling stories, you know, not a shoot 'em up, but a narrative story.
Yeah.
And then tips, I just think for adults, for the teachers that want to write, we need to tap into we need to tap into our inner kid. You're not going to get it right the first time, and you might not get it right the 5th time. But if you're enjoying yourself, and you don't think about who's going to look at it and can I get published and can I get an agent, you just write a story because an idea or a setting or a character won't let you go, and you just want to know what's going to happen next and why have they done that. And the biggest writing tip is just to be curious, you know, be genuinely curious and interested in everything, in anything, you know. Why? That's our first question, isn't it? When you know, why is the sky blue? Why? And I think we just need to get back to asking why, like that.
Yeah. Good tips. I think I'm inspired. I'm gonna write a short story tonight.
But more practically, because that's probably a bit woo-woo. More practically would be get it all out. Don't stop as you go, whatever it is, short story, poem, whatever. Because if you edit as you go, you're accessing a different part of your brain, and it's your inner critic that will be like, what's that amazing movie clip about? It was a dark and stormy night. It was a dark and rainy. No, it was, that whatever that
No,
is.
I need to get the punctuation right, and I need to get this adverbial opener correct. It's not about that, is it? It's about the.
That's scary. You just swear at me. Yeah, you can worry about that later, and don't be afraid to make weird and strange jumps. If something, instead of nails down
Never a problem I normally have.
Yeah. But it's just fun. Having fun, I think, experimenting is a tip, because everyone does things differently, and there really isn't a right way of doing something, and you can kind of innovate however you want. Just get it all out first, leave it for a day or two, whatever it is, and then come back and look at it with a different set of eyes, really.
Great. Thank you, Emma. We're now going to move on to our quick fire fiction section, the next part of our live session, where we'll be creating a classroom resource live together. You could replay this video straight from YouTube tomorrow if you want, as Emma's going to do a short reading for us, and we're then going to follow up with some comprehension questions to see if she has understood her own writing. It'll be the real test. But also you can ask your children in the classroom whether they understood the writing. We'll also be hosting this on litfilmfest.com as well, so you can check out this resource at a later date to use with your class, with parts of Emma's text as well. So Emma, are you ready to be quick fire fictioned?
Yes. Am I?
Good. Excellent. And also, during this, while Emma's reading, please tell us how you have taught the Victorian time period in your classroom. We'd love to know. We'd love to have some practical advice for all those, all the other teachers out there. And you also stand a chance to win 5 copies of Emma's book if you like the video, leave us a comment, or follow the LitFilmFest page. Okay, Emma, take it away.
Okay. Springing up, he reached for the pole holding the tent up and swung himself lightly around it, curling round like a snake. No tricks, he scoffed. You can ride, though. Unable to meet his bright, blazing eyes, I shook my head, my cheeks flaming. Tumble? Spin? His voice tore through me. No. Walk the rope? Juggle? Clown? I cannot. Then I felt cross as I ever had. Just because I was forced to be here didn't mean I had to endure humiliation. Who was this boy anyway? I can't do any of those things. Ha! You claim to be Pablo's son and you can't even flip? I don't claim to be anyone, I shouted. This boy looked and sounded more like Pablo's son than me. I bunched my hands into fists. I didn't care. I didn't need either of them. They were welcome to each other.
Ooh. Oh, wow. There's some deep feeling within that. So you can feel a lot of humiliation, I think, there, which leads us on to, have you ever felt humiliated? And if you did, how did you react? If not, how would you?
Well, sometimes I think if you think about being a kid or being a teenager, there's a lot of humiliation in there, isn't there, really? Or there's a lot of you feeling like, going through this with my own kids, feeling like everyone's thinking about you, everyone's judging you. Don't judge, says my son all the time. Don't judge, Mum, don't judge. I'm not judging. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about what I need to get from the shops, It's easy to think people are thinking about you, judging you, and they're generally not. They're thinking about their own stuff going on. So I think there's been lots of little humiliations. I remember something that stung quite hard once when I was about 11, I think, and I'd been taken a real leap to say to somebody something that I'd written, fiction. I'd always wanted to write since I was about 10, and I recited something, and it was really hard for me to do this. And the woman in question turned around and just sort of said, "And where did you copy that from?" And I was crushed. And it's not that it was great or anything. I just had bared my soul and got shot down by a grown-up, which kind of broke my heart and stopped me wanting to show or tell anyone for years. but generally, and now as well, and even as a sort of teenager, I think in my 20s I was quite defensive, but nowadays and as a kid I just laugh it off, because you just, humor can cover a lot of things, and no one's perfect. And if you can just genuinely say, I bodged up there, or I messed up, or what, have you never done anything stupid or tripped over or whatever, then yeah, I would probably just, it's not the end of the world, and it really isn't. Even if it feels like it, it'll only feel like it till the next disaster from you or someone else.
We all make mistakes. It's fine.
Exactly. Exactly.
Has someone ever suggested that you could do something because your parents or guardians could? What could that be?
I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything. I know that people have made assumptions, thinking that you're a certain type of person, or you look a certain way, whatever that is, race or age, or the fact, your sex. So people have expected things of me, for me to like certain things, music, books, TV. People are sometimes surprised that I love sci-fi films. Can't write sci-fi, wouldn't dream of trying. And some things like that, like I've got a very broad interest in all sorts of things that I like. So some people are surprised. But no, I don't think anyone's ever suggested I could do something. I had quite a different and sometimes difficult background where I kind of moved around a lot.
Right.
So if anything, people were probably surprised that I didn't end up a wrong 'un.
Well, you see that in your extract, don't you? That Ted is clearly expected to be good, at doing circus tricks because his father is, and there must be a big expectation there, and that's part of that humiliation, isn't it? In the first question there, that he doesn't feel like he's living up to this legacy that he didn't even understand.
I think that's a lot of, yeah, and I think that's a lot of pressure we can put on our children, and people can put on us, our parents of whatever age, is that thing of, dad or mum loves to do X, Y, Z, and I don't, and is that a problem? Or, so yeah, I could definitely empathize with Ted for that. His dad is a, prize-winning equestrian who loves to ride horses, and Ted is scared of horses. He's terrified. So yeah.
They are big, like cows.
They're massive, aren't they? Beautiful, but quite alarming. Yeah.
In a field with a cow. No, no thanks. In your text, what does the word scoffed mean? It's a good word. I do love that word, scoffed.
It's a very is it onomatopoeia when the word sounds like what it is? Yeah, scoff. It sounds a bit like that, but it doesn't mean that. So it's mocking and kind of like, you can't do that. Yeah, I'm gonna scoff at you.
There's a bit of a sneer there, isn't it?
Yeah, snoffing, sneered. Yeah.
Looking down your nose at someone, isn't it? Just thinking they're lower than you.
Taking the Mickey out of. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mickey. That's it. That's the dictionary definition. And what are these tricks that you mentioned in your passage there?
So the tricks are, so we've got tumble, flip. So they're all acrobatics. The people that can fling themselves around and do a double backflip, or have been doing gymnastics, all that gymnastics. And then we've got juggling, clowning. There was kind of a couple of different types of clowns around at that time. So there were literally a lot of physical comedy. There are a lot more kind of Buster Keaton tripping over a thing and climbing up a ladder, and a bit of magician illusion at the same time. And walk the rope, tightrope walking. Yeah. So
I love that you can use clown as a verb as well. Yeah. So you can clown around, taking that noun and just making it into a verb. It works really well, doesn't it, in writing?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Great.
So he can't do any at the moment. Ted can't do any of them. So, yeah.
What body language does Ted exhibit to show how he's feeling? And what is he feeling?
So Ted, well, just before when I start reading, he's folding and unfolding his hands in his lap because he's feeling bad. He's feeling bad. And as Larkin challenges him and asks him questions, poor old Ted, he starts to feel worse and worse and worse. So, yeah, Larkin's like, can you do this? And Ted's like, no, thinking it might end there. And then Larkin just keeps prodding him. Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you, like someone saying, have you got that? Have you got that? Have you seen that? Have you seen that? And the more and more it goes on, the more embarrassed Ted is. But Ted's pretty proud. He's a proud boy. He's sort of started to teach himself to read a little bit in evening class, and he's got a very strong sense of self, of who he is and what he thinks is right and wrong, as a lot of children do. We've got a very strong sense of that's right, that's wrong, justice. So he's proper embarrassed, and with that embarrassment comes a kind of need to protect himself and to defend himself, which so he kind of fights back verbally a bit. And
I'm going to give you half a mark, Emma. Half a mark, Emma, on your own book. Also, something happens to his cheeks as well, which was the answer I was looking for. What happens to his cheeks, Emma?
What's happening to my cheeks right now? They flame. That's the one.
That's the ticket.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Yeah. His hands do unfurl, don't they? And he doesn't know what to do with himself to protect himself. But the one thing that you can't hide, if ever you feel embarrassed or you feel angry, is people do go red. Don't certain people go very red when they're feeling certain ways, and it's never something that you can hide if you react in that way. So that kind of hot embarrassment, I thought, really came out well in that passage.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I've got a friend who she gets like a flush comes from her neck. She goes really red from here.
I think it starts at the toes. And then just carries on. You only see it from the neck. Why did you choose to use the simile in the first sentence? I haven't told you because I want you to find it.
You're not going easy on me, are you, Tim?
No, I'm a teacher.
I like it. Okay, so curling around like a snake. That's the one, isn't it? Is that right? What mark? Well, yeah, because I think you see, I don't write as consciously as this, you see, but thinking about it now is actually really interesting. And we all associate personality traits with animals. We just do. And we've done it from time, haven't we? So we've got snakes in the Bible, yeah. And we've got snake in Jungle Book, and neither of them are particularly pleasant, are they? So a snake we would associate with, unless we own snakes or know lots about them, we would generally say snakes are slippery, all the S words, slippery and slimy and sneaky, and the way they move, they haven't got any legs. You can't trust something without legs, can you?
Snaky.
Yeah, exactly. So that is how Ted is feeling about Larky when he first meets him. He doesn't know him. He can't trust him. And he's already, making a physical action of something he can do that Ted can't. So already he's basically saying, without saying it, I'm better than you. I belong here and you don't. Look at what I can do. And I'm going to get you in my snaky little, So that's why I chose to use that. So it's more a reflection. I am very character based, and it's much more, I'm kind of in Ted's head, and that's how Ted is seeing things.
So the next one is his voice tore through me. This was actually my favorite sentence in the extract. How can somebody's voice tear through you?
Well, it wouldn't be very Victorian to say he was gutted. It's going to tear through him, to tear something. it's a violent act, isn't it? You're tearing something. It's probably, it's even bigger than a rip, you know, you're tearing something. So the way that Larkin's asking him and demanding things of him and speaking to him is just tearing, you know, it's literally tearing Ted apart. He feels awful and violated, you know, his very kind of why he's there, and, you know, it's cold and he's lonely, and yeah. So I think it can tear through you if those words have a huge effect of kind of devastating you. It's kind of ripped his own ideas of who he is right in half.
Mm. It's the feeling of humiliation, doesn't it? You feel like violated, or like something's literally gone like through you. So I think that's that really talked to me about emotion, the emotion of someone really saying hurtful words, and the impact of that is, you know, you feel less, or you feel like a shell afterwards, don't you? I think that, I thought that was really well written.
Oh, thank you. And if you think about it, it's really hard to humiliate yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's something that's done to you because someone's pointing out something that, you know, you're really insecure about or conscious of anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, and our last question is, who are you setting Pablo up to be in this extract? What's the expectation of Pablo?
Now you're asking. Well, I think the expectation is that Pablo is going to expect stuff. Do you know what I mean? He's someone that you're going to have to deliver. You know, what can you do? You've been brought here for a reason, Ted, Larkin's kind of saying. You know, you're going to have to prove that you need to be here. You know, it's not just enough that Ted is his son. You know, he's got to be able to perform, or that, you know, that's what Ted's thinking. Larkin is saying, it isn't enough just that you're his son. You've got to be able to do something. Better not let him down. Yeah, that kind of feeling that, you know, if your teacher says, you know, everyone sit up straight, the headmaster or headmistress is coming round in a minute.
Oh, I know it. I know that feeling. Great. Thank you so much, Emma. You passed with flying colours.
Woohoo!
Thank you. You get 90%. That is an A- about your own book.
Not bad.
Not bad. We'll also be releasing this part of the interview as a classroom resource at some point on litfilmfest.com. So please check that out. And you can use it as a comprehension task with your class, which is great. If you are interested in Emma's book, please do like or leave a comment about in the comments below, telling us who you think should be in the circus. Maybe it's a cheeky TA or your head teacher or another teacher in the school. And you could stand a chance of winning. 3 people will win 5 copies of Emma's lovely book, The Son of the Circus, which is a beautiful book. Do you want to hold it up, Emma, so we can see it? I do like seeing the cover.
Look, shiny.
It is a gold prize. That's it. And 5 copies. That's enough for a guided reading activity, which is wonderful, isn't it? So thank you again to Scholastic for providing those. 3 people are going to win 5 copies. Leave a like our page, or leave a comment below. And entries in the UK or Ireland stand a chance of winning a copy. So 5 copies. So that's great. Thank you, Emma. I'm going to leave you now to go back to your lovely Victorian cottage where you do all of your writing.
I'm going to get my son out of the chimney. He's been up there for quite some time. So
you do actually have a few more books coming out as well, don't you? Would you like to tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, I've got. Hang on, let me see if I can. So, because sometimes real life is fascinating as well, I have just out is a biography about Nelson Mandela. Fantastic. Part of the Extraordinary Lives series via Puffin. But next April, if you would like to read more from me, something completely different, I have a book coming out called Amber Undercover, which is for 10 years plus, sort of upper middle grade. and it's contemporary, and it's totally different, fast-paced adventure, kind of comedy, drama, adventure. Think kind of light-hearted Alex Rider, but maybe for girls. Although of course boys can read it too. But Amber is our heroine. She's 14, and she's an undercover spy.
Ooh,
so yeah, that's out next April.
Great.
So yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. I like writing all sorts. I just love engaging with all sorts of topics, for all sorts of age ranges, middle grade, YA, everything. And yeah, it's more coming from me.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Tim. This was lovely.
Oh, real pleasure. And don't forget, everyone, to check out all of our book projects as well online. We've got lots and lots of book review projects for free on the website, where you can review a book with your class. And they've all been individualized with individual whiteboards and questions to get you going, from Michael Morpurgo's Kensuke's Kingdom to Val Jakpoor from S.F. Said. So please do check those out. They're really good. We've also, there's so much to share, I tell you, Emma. There's so much going on. We've also just released the Quick Fire Write challenges as well, which are bite-sized projects to do with all different types of topics. I don't think we have a Victorian one, but we do have one on world governments, some on the Windrush, and that one links quite well with what we've been talking about: voting rights, vacant land, university education, you name it. There's a project that goes alongside a project that you're doing, which is great. And they're just simple bite-sized projects with a video, so you can play the video, and there's lots of activities and questions within those projects itself. So nice bite-sized projects just to use, just if you've got a bit of spare time, to get kids writing some lengthy passages from video stimulus. So really powerful. And again, we've got over 100. I think we've got 200 in the bag, nearly coming out. We're bringing out more all the time, so please do check those out online. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, Emma. Oh, Emma's gone. She's had enough. So take care, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Bye.